I'm going to go ahead with the meeting beginning ritual.
起立，面向佛堂，参加三鞠躬、一鞠躬、再鞠躬、三鞠躬，参加各位点传是一鞠躬，开班一鞠躬，请坐下。Please be seated.
I promised last week that we'd spend some time on the concentration of the spirit and the essential energies. And this is the second installment in that discussion. I surely hope you guys are enjoying this because I got to tell you, I'm having an awful lot of fun talking about the relationship between Taiji Chuan and the Tao studies, which here in the West is virtually unknown. I do not know of anyone other than us at the moment that's even exploring this path of study, which is kind of a shame because it's a very rich and very deep source of knowledge and wisdom. But it still makes me very happy to be able to share. I want to start off with a dictionary view of a couple of things because I'm going to use some terms over the next couple of weeks that many of you may or may not be familiar with, and so to kind of get us all on the same page for starters, here we go. And once again, if there's a misspelling, typo, or misquote in the documentation, I'll ask that Derek or anyone else who speaks Chinese natively feel free to straighten me out because I do not. And I wasn't a great speller or typist to start with. Anyway, one of the terms you hear me bandy about most frequently is Taiji. It is the first word in Taiji Chuan. Here in the West, the practice of Taiji Chuan is simply known as Taiji. Taichi. That is a misspelling and misrepresentation both of what that term is and what it means, which makes it virtually impossible in the West to discover the true meaning of Taiji Chuan because one can't access the actual characters and words that are utilized to describe it here. Taiji, Taiji, means the supreme or ultimate or maximum extent of. It is a superlative expression. Taiji Chuan means the ultimate extent or the supreme extent of the fist. That's what it means. No more, no less, that's it. For many Westerners who only understand Taiji Chuan as a practice to health and relaxation, this definition comes as a shock and a surprise. Here in the West, for some reason, the thoughts of Taiji Chuan as a martial science system is lost. It just is. And I think to a large degree, that's due to the rather severe cultural barrier between here and China, and it's also due to the fact that most of the people who are serious practitioners of Taiji Chuan keep the martial skills very close to the vest. I, for one, have spent my entire teaching career not publishing anything having to do with the practice or utilization of martial technique in, for instance, the Tea House or our website or any other publicly accessible forum, because I have a real significant problem with disseminating information that may give somebody the ability to injure or kill another human being without having any measure of control over how that knowledge is acquired. I don't want to be responsible for an occurrence like that happening. And so I flat out refuse to share that information in those sorts of forums, even when somebody asks me directly. That has caused for certain people in certain public forums to state that I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, well, if that's the price I have to pay because I refuse to share, so be it. I'll take that. But hopefully you guys can recognize that what I'm presenting here is authentic and that it is the real deal. And there are those who can teach the martial disciplines that are much closer to you than Indianapolis, if that's what you want. And if you're somewhere where that's not available, if you get in touch with me, I know an awful lot of people in that community, and we can find someone, hopefully in relatively close proximity to you, where you can acquire that course of study if you're seeking it. The next term is equally as misunderstood in the West, and that's Kung Fu. Kung Fu is the term in America that we associate with all forms of Chinese boxing. The somewhat more precise term for some of the Chinese martial systems. For some reason, Kung Fu's what's stuck. It's like Tai Chi. It's the comfortable, easy to relate to associative term that is kind of that blanket English term for all Asian martial systems, other than karate, which is somewhat interchangeably utilized there. That's not at all what Kung Fu means. Doesn't have anything to do with it. Kung Fu is to achieve a level of mastery so superior as to appear nearly supernatural in nature. It is the result of countless years of hard work and practice. Okay, that's what it is. It is the result of dedication and commitment that goes beyond dedication and commitment that most people these days really understand. And practice and instruction and work that goes on for an entire lifetime or more. In point of fact, I've been practicing now for 47 years. And I still don't call myself great, good, or anything but barely adequate. Because I know the people that are better than I am, and I look at them like they're amazing. My students look at me the same way, and I find that I find that somewhat gratifying. It means that I'm doing something right. But I've never called myself a great master, and in fact, I can't really, because I'm never going to be Chinese, not in this lifetime. And that means that there is some knowledge that I will never have access to. That there are some things I will never understand. That there are some terms that I will never be able to adequately explain. And the folks that I teach are just going to have to be happy with the best that I can do there. However, for what's available in the middle of scenic Indianapolis, Indiana, man, I'm not too bad. But I've put an entire lifetime of study and research and practice and seeking out training and work to acquire the knowledge that I have, to sharpen the skills, and to make it appear to everyone else like it's easy. An entire lifetime. That's Kung Fu. So when you think about that term, now you understand what's behind it. You can have Kung Fu at doing the dishes if you do the dishes in such a superlative, masterful manner that people look at you and go, that's the most nearly supernatural appearing round of doing the dishes I've ever seen. You can have Kung Fu at any discipline. And the truth is, the application of practice and work and a little elbow grease is all that's required to get there. Okay? We're going to talk a lot about raising the spirit of a person. In this context, what we're talking about in terms of raising the spirit is the Shin, or the Yi, concentrated and focused. The Shin and Yi in this context refers to the mind intent, the will, if you will, the thought processes, choices, decisions, and intrinsic power of a human mind. Okay? That particular term is one of the most powerful that exists and one of the most frequently overlooked. We're also going to speak about Tuiso, pushing hands. For those of you who participate in and watch martial tournaments, it is a rarity to see masters of the various Taiji Chuan systems involved in those kinds of contests. There are a couple of reasons for that. I can't speak for anybody but myself, although I suspect that my logic probably is reasonably accepted across the board. The reason that I don't do tournaments and fighting contests and that sort of thing anymore is because I do not want to inflict on another human being what I'm going to do to him if I hit him. By utilizing the internal arts, of which Taiji Chuan is one, I can do such incredible damage to a person that it isn't worth the risk for me to fight him, no matter what. And the few people that I have seen who profess to be masters of the internal arts who have done this have pretty much summarily gotten their butts whooped and given the rest of us a pretty bad name because, I suspect, they got a little ahead of themselves. And so by not knowing what they were doing or not applying what they thought they knew what they were doing, they managed to get themselves in an awful lot of trouble. And that's a situation to be avoided in any case, no matter what the level of practice is. But the point of this discussion is a much higher level of practice than simply going to try to bring home some plastic trophy or a belt or some token of martial accomplishment. Those things are not the measure of martial proficiency or mastery of the self, either one. Those are tokens of the ability to cause somebody else a lot of pain and injury. And okay, I myself, don't need too terribly much of that these days. I already did that once. So why do we practice Taiji Chuan? What's the purpose? Well, we can't go without saying that it is for self-defense, among other things. Taiji Chuan is a martial system. It is, plain and simple. The practices of the Taiji form, particularly the 108-step long forms from the Wudang Temple, from the Qian family, from the Yang family, are martial forms. The application of the techniques, of the movements within the form are concealed within the form. But once they're understood, they're remarkably powerful and effective. The purpose of learning the form is to teach the body to move in ways that the body doesn't naturally move, to train the mind to manipulate the body in that way, and to balance and raise the essential energies so that the internal arts can be applied correctly and appropriately. But it is still a defensive system. And it is, perhaps, of all the martial systems that exist, the most potent and effective of them. And then there's what we know in the West as the reason for the practice, which of course is health and relaxation. This also is a valid purpose. It is one of the reasons for which people practice Taiji Chuan and Qigong. And although the energies, as Ed said last week, are subtle energies, I love that term, by the way, they are potent and powerful energies that, when properly applied, can do much to heal the body, the mind, and the spirit. And so these practices have their place in health management and wellness, as they help people to maintain a strong, healthy, flexible, and relaxed body, mind, and spirit. Which brings us to the holistic healing aspect of the practice. It's one that is not frequently discussed, and one that's barely known here. But if one approaches a longtime practitioner of, for instance, the Wu school of Taiji Chuan, healing is the predominant educational pathway in that system. It is much less concerned, generally speaking, with the martial aspects of the forms and practices, and much more concerned with healing the body, mind, and spirit of the practitioner and others. Dr. Wu, who runs our sister school in Handan with Master Li Chao, is a Wu-style practitioner and is extremely proficient at those healing activities. A source of tremendous information and understanding. Even less known, perhaps, than the healing aspect, particularly here in the West, are the disciplines of mastering the self and refining the spirit, to bring an individual from a collection of parts into a unified state of being, one united whole, if you will, where the body, mind, and spirit move as one, where there is present moment awareness that is effective, and no defect in movement or thought. That's very easy to talk about. It's very difficult to achieve. It stems from a practice in Tuiso, pushing hands, called desiring to attract to emptiness. Shan Song Feng, the progenitor of Taiji Chuan, says that when we desire to attract to emptiness, when we have mastered that practice, we're able to deflect 1,000 pounds with 4 ounces. But in failing in that desire to attract to emptiness, we are unable to deflect anything. The demonstration of that skill is most easily seen as I toss around 3 or 4 of my students like rag dolls without moving but just a couple of inches myself. It is accomplished by understanding, in simplistic terms, where the opponent's going and simply allowing them to continue to go there. I don't interfere with them. I help them. Sounds simple, doesn't it? It isn't. But it is remarkably effective. So what does it mean to desire to attract to emptiness? Yeah. We'll have that discussion now, because this affects both our Tao studies and the practices of Taiji Chuan. First of all, it means knowing oneself and knowing others. Okay? I've spoken before about a technique called the correct touch, where when a person touches you, you know instantly where their weight and center of mass is going, what direction they're moving, whether or not there is intent upward or downward, left or right, forward or backwards. You feel that the second that they put their fingers or whatever upon you. That's part of that knowledge of oneself and others. There is a deeper measure to that, which is the understanding of the intent of the other person, knowing the heart and mind of the other person, knowing what it is they think they're going to do to you at the time when they touch you or approach you. And it is that understanding of intent that allows us to so easily overcome an opponent. Somewhat less easily is overcoming ourselves. We do not have an opponent to read when we're looking at ourselves in the mirror. There we only have what we ourselves see, what we ourselves feel, our own hearts, our own minds, our own bodies. And there we have to make the choice as to what we're going to do with what we find there and how we're going to treat those things. Lao Tzu says that a person who can overcome others has strength, but the one who can overcome himself has wisdom. And that's probably well, not probably, it's absolutely a profound way of thinking and doing things. To know ourselves initially means giving ourselves up to follow others. Understanding these principles doesn't happen by accident. You don't just wander into it one day and discover this. Typically, I would say that would be very much akin to sudden enlightenment. And I won't say that it never happens, but I'd say it doesn't happen very often. It typically involves putting down everything that we think we know and allowing someone else to instruct us in the way things really work. Twice in my life, I've had martial masters instruct me in the way things really work. And not so much of that education was in fighting skill. If I had to weight it, probably 70 to 80% of it was more along the lines of living, of relating to other people's skills, of understanding myself skills, of understanding the motivations of others' skills. And even with a lot of years of instruction, being able to master those things within myself proved to be extremely difficult. There's a level of self-honesty and critical self-thought that has to be applied to refine the spirit of a person, to change what is the nature of a human heart, to improve one's thinking and one's spirituality. And sometimes that can be difficult to do because we have to face those parts of us that we'd rather not look at and definitely would rather not have other people see. But if we don't deal with those things at some point in time in our lives, they haunt us forever. We have to be able to achieve what John Song Fung calls correct timing and position. In Tui So practice, that's allowing ourselves to follow an opponent to the point where we can take advantage of an opponent's weaknesses, where we can utilize their movement against them, where we can cause them to become unbalanced or heavily double-weighted on one side or the other. That is, where they lose agility or responsiveness, so that we can overcome what they're doing and cause them to become backed up, where they can't attack us. In life, achieving that correct position and timing is being able to take advantage of the opportunities that present themselves to us so that we can improve our circumstances. Improving our circumstances comes about by learning and by applying a bit of wisdom to that knowledge and understanding so that the opportunities aren't wasted. And we're able to refine our minds and spirits so that we can do what it is we should do and then learn the difference between what's appropriate and what's not, and what works and what doesn't. John Song Fung talks about making the body a single unit, about eliminating the impediments to the flows of the essential energies, hollows and protuberances, holes, breaks, disconnects. Consider that in terms of how we think and how we move through life and how we relate to other people and what our perceptions tell us if we are not a unified person. We can misperceive all kinds of signals and messages simply by not understanding a situation properly. The unified person brings all of their senses to bear on every situation that confronts them. And because they absorb much more information and see a much wider horizon than one who is less connected, they're able to make better decisions and better choices. This is one of the keys to managing a situation so that it does not degenerate into a physical conflict. Misunderstanding has been responsible for wars on this planet, and it can be responsible for an awful lot of conflict between people. A little compassion, a little understanding, a broader brush view of a situation, all can help preserve peace and prevent the kind of both languages and interactions that create conflict between people. He says that the Shin and the Qi should be expanded and excited. That's another way for saying they should be concentrated and moving, not passive. In other words, the mind shouldn't be elsewhere. It should be in the moment, paying attention, analyzing, thinking, moving. And the Qi coursing through the body, ready to move when it's needed. And at the same time, despite the fact that both of these things are in motion, both are gathered. There's a term I probably should have put in the dictionary slide that I didn't really consider as I was writing this talk. But I want to speak for just a second about the Danqian. In our school, we use that term perhaps somewhat inappropriately because there are three, but I use that term to refer to the point on the body 2 fingers below the belly button, which is the gathering place of the Qi in Qi Hai, which is the ocean of Qi. The abdominal area is where the Qi gathers. And that point is where I tell people to focus their concentration to gather the essential energy. That spot, as the Qi gathers, concentrates the energy so that it can be moved throughout the body. It is the Shin, the mind intent, that causes it to move. In all situations, it is the mind intent that causes motion in us, that analyzes the situation before us, that feels the touch of the opponent, and determines where the Qi will go and what it will do. And so it is important to understand what it is the Shin perceives. As we practice these things, we find ourselves able to raise the spirit, the Shin, the Yi, the intrinsic force, the power within each of us to manage whatever it is that's in front of us appropriately. And this is the goal of Taiji Chuan practice. Not the ability to beat somebody else senseless. That can be accomplished in any number of ways. But the ability to understand, to appropriately evaluate what's going on in a situation or in our lives or in the lives of someone else. And through that understanding, to be able to do what's appropriate. And so raising the spirit, raising the Shin, begins with self-knowledge, the process of overcoming the self. But gaining that self-knowledge, okay, begins by giving up the self to follow others who have already gone through the process and can instruct us how to get from here to there. In achieving correct timing and position, we apply knowledge and wisdom, learning to put ourselves in the most advantageous position in a situation, not to overcome someone, but to make the most appropriate and best decisions. So the deeper implications of the teachings here can now be seen. And this is where the path of Taiji Chuan and the Tao intersect. It never was the intent of the masters of Wudong Mountain to create a martial system based in violence and aggression. Never. In Taiji Chuan, we don't go start the fight. We do everything we can to avoid the fight. It is only when the opponent presses the fight that we then respond to what he does. If the opponent isn't a threat, there is absolutely no need for us to move. Interesting how different that is than the function of most of society. And I even still wrestle with this from time to time, even to this day. I find when I'm driving my car, everybody else on the road is either a moron or an idiot. I am the only person who knows how to drive. You think that doesn't have anything to do with this process? It absolutely does. I can catch myself in my car starting my own conflict with a person who can't even hear me because they cut me off at an intersection, and it frustrates me to no end. That pops up in my mind before I can ever even stop it from doing so. At least I don't get out of the car at traffic lights and, go run up to the other person's car and yell at them. But still, that tells me, I still have some ways to go in mastering the self, in mastering the situations, in achieving correct position and timing. Lao Tzu speaks about this too. The purpose of practicing the Tao teachings is to achieve that smoother, easier, more beneficial, less stressful life that all of us are hoping to achieve. And yet, when we're in our cars, we are all our own worst enemies. So where are we trying to go? Well, we're trying to get to the point of the spirit realized. And I think we all can pretty much see what that means there. We're looking for that fully integrated, complete oneness, that return to emptiness, the return to the void that is the Tao, that receptive and nurturing yin spirit that's a part of all of us that seems to be so doggone ethereal and tough to grasp sometimes, where the Shin, the Qi, and the Jing are unified, and we move as a connected whole and not just a collection of parts, where we're aware in the present moment and make the best choices that can be made based on the things that are happening to us, free from the ego self, free from the desires of the self, free from the attachments that we form in this life to the things that don't matter, where there's no situation that cannot be managed, nothing that can't be handled appropriately. And please notice, I've not put limitations on what appropriately is. Appropriately could be different for every one of us in any set of the same circumstances. It's about making the right choices at the right time, And I can't tell you guys what those are. But you can find out for yourselves. Where we, in our lives, have achieved the union of both Taiji, the supreme ultimate extent, and Tao. It is the perfection of form and function. When I was putting this talk together, one of the recurring thoughts that kept coming back to me, particularly as I think about my own training and practice, is that we are all only limited by what it is that we can bring ourselves to believe and by what we can comprehend and understand. 46 years ago, if somebody had told me that I would be doing some of the things that I can do now as a result of this practice, I'd have told them they were nuts. Because back then I couldn't bring myself to believe or even begin to understand some of these skills and some of these practices. I didn't think they existed. And those sorts of things still happen to me from time to time. I'm in the midst of one of them right now that's positively amazing, where I'm in a project at the office that I thought was going to be just all kinds of difficult and was fraught with just tons of political landmines and risks. And yet over the last few days it's opened up and gone wonderfully, despite what I thought was the likely outcome. And I look at those situations with wonder and amazement, because I myself don't necessarily do anything that causes that, and yet it seems to work out miraculously pretty much every time. And I don't care if I do this for 100 years. You know, when those sorts of things happen, I'm going to look at it with wonder and amazement and awe, because to me it is miraculous. And yet it is the very work that I'm talking about of raising the spirit that gives us the ability to expand our horizon and take in those kinds of events, to be able to have faith that those things can and will occur, and to understand them when they do, or at least try. Equally as importantly, Taiji Chuan is not just education for the sake of combat. I realize most people in the West do not see the practices of Taiji Chuan as a martial system. But for those who do, who have not yet realized the relationship between Taiji Chuan and the Taoist studies, understand it's not just for fighting. And for those who haven't gotten there yet, you know, it's not just life lessons. There is more on both sides. And lastly, you know, until we acknowledge what it is that we don't know, we can't learn. It's only when we know and understand that we are lacking in knowledge and wisdom that we can give ourselves the ability to absorb the knowledge and wisdom that we really need. That is the process of giving up ourselves to follow others. And without that, life gets very lonely and learning can be very difficult. It's why we have the ordained masters at the temple. It's why we have folks like Derek at the temple. Those are people who understand and know things that we do not know, who have seen things that we haven't seen. And that knowledge and wisdom is definitely worth tapping into. And it's wonderful to have available to us. It is expansive and definitely helpful. Thank you all very much for letting me share with you today. And you know, as always, I do truly hope that something I said was helpful to someone. Thank you very much.
Bill, thank you. So there's feedback and also questions for you. And I want to go back to a term for clarification, just to inform everyone. So the term is tuiso, which is pushing hands. So it's composed of two characters in Chinese. First character, tui, means to push. Second character, shou, means hands. So literally the two characters mean pushing hands. So the Romanization, the way it's spelled in English, T-U-I, sounds more like the Cantonese pronunciation. To say it properly in Mandarin, it's more like an A sound, tui, just so you know. Of course, there are many differences between, the Cantonese dialect and Mandarin. So one big example is that the Cantonese pronunciation for martial arts master, kung fu master, Sifu, S-I-F-U. But as I mentioned previously, in Mandarin, it's actually Shifu. It's actually S-H-I instead of S-I. So just a quick reference for everyone. Pushing hands, tuiso. You start with your, your hands touching one another, and you're pushing and pulling, and the idea is to develop sensitivity. And these we're very fortunate to have Bill and Ed speaking to us, and they can talk much more knowledgeably about that. I'm just around to provide any clarification to the characters. So there's a lot more to be said about that, but let me get to the feedback. So Bill, Mike says, Bill's talks always ring true. Love the lessons. And also from Trisha, Bill, I'm very much enjoying this series of talks. And from Gavin, thank you, Bill, for a very informative talk. In the Taoist lexicon of martial arts practice is the practice of Qigong also part of it? Sorry, go ahead.
I didn't hear that last part. I'm sorry.
In the Taoist lexicon of martial arts practice, is the practice of Qigong also part of it?
Yes, absolutely it is.
And also a question from Mike, similar question in the same area of concern, and the question is, must one practice the martial arts to advance in the Tao?
Is that must one practice the martial arts?
Right. Is it necessary to practice the martial arts to advance in the Tao?
Oh, thank you. No, it isn't necessary. It is, in the West anyway, it seems a fairly common path of access into the Tao studies because the martial sciences are readily accessible here, and then the Tao studies not so much. But it's absolutely not prerequisite. It just happens to be the way that I got there, and I think perhaps the way Ed got there. But no, in China it would be considered, I think, uncommon for somebody to find the Tao studies by wandering through the martial sciences.
Let's go ahead and do the meeting ending ritual, everybody. 起立，面向佛堂，持架三鞠躬，一鞠躬，再鞠躬，三鞠躬，持架各位顶传十一鞠躬，斜班一鞠躬。We're done, everybody. Thank you so much.